Welcome back. In this episode, we're going to load up our images onto the interface we made last time. First thing we need to do is collect all the images we're actually going to use into one place. So I need to change the view on this. To a list. I want to make a new folder. I'll call this one images as well. And put all of the PNGs with 64 at the end of them into the image folder. 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, and 1024. I'm also going to have to make one more image that we forgot to make last time. .64 by 64 dimensions, and we will fill it with a lighter gray color. Maybe this. That should work. And I'm just going to save this. To the images thing as tile 00 underscore 64.png. Now let me copy this, and I'm going to put that into the bin folder. There we go. Perfect. This should have, yes, has 12 tiles for the 11 numbers we have in the game, and the tile that will show an empty space. Alright, looking back in our game class, actually, it's the GUI class that needs this. We're going to create a new data member. We're going to have to import java.util.hashtable. Hashtable. That's actually just lowercase t. And java.util.map. And somewhere in here, probably after the color, I'll just make this map number tiles equal a new hash table. Actually, we'll define that elsewhere. This is the map called number tiles. Under the constructor and before the private class, I'm going to create a new function. Load private void load number tiles. And then I'm going to say that number tiles is a new hash table. And here we're going to have to load all of our images into this hash table so that we can access them and put them on the panel as needed. So I'm going to say class loader CLDR equals this.getClass.getClassLoader. By the end of this episode, we're going to have this entire thing in a Java archive file, and this class loader is going to help us get the URLs for the images we need. So I'm going to create a URL called URL0000, which will be cldr.getResource, I believe is the name of the function. Yes. And we'll have it go to images. No, we need to look at the images folder under the bin folder. Images slash tile 00 underscore 64 .png. And we'll need to do this for all of these. So the URL for the number 1 will be tile01. URL for the number 2 is tile02. URL for the number 4 is tile04. URL for the number 8 is tile08. URL for 16 is tile16. URL for 32 is tile32. URL for 64 is tile64. Oops, just 64. The URL for tile 128 is tile 128. URL for 256 is tile 256. .512 and 1024. So if we did this right, we should have 12 lines here. I don't know why I can't see the side numbers properly here. Let's see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Good. I believe this is all correct. And now for the next step, we will use numbertiles.put, which will put a new key value pair into our hash table. For the number 0 as the key, we'll have a new image icon. URL 000. So if we just make these correlations, it'll be easier to get these tiles later. So we have to do the same thing again. For the number 1, URL 0001. When we're looking for an image icon to draw on the panel, we'll pull the number out of the integer array from GameBoard and look for a number like 0 or 1 in number tiles to see if there's a match. Then we'll grab the image, which will be the value associated with that key in the hash table number tiles. So let's just keep doing this quickly. 2 with URL 2. 4 with URL 4. 8 with URL 8. 16 with URL 16. 32 with URL 32. 64 with URL 64. 128. 256. Five, 1, 2. I don't know if you can hear that rooster. That'd be pretty cool if you can. Get some perspective on where I'm at, or what kind of place I'm at. Let's make sure there's 12. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so I think we've correlated all of the numbers that we could have with a new image icon. And we already established the URLs up here. I think that's all we need to do to load our number tiles. Okay. Now let's put this to the test. In our paint component thing, we will make an integer array called temp array, because it's just a test. Maybe I'll just call it test. Will equal, let's say 0, 1, 2, 4 in one layer, 8, 16, 32, 64 in another layer, 128, 256, 512, and 1024 in the other layer, and then 0, 0, 0, and 0 in the last layer. Make sure the braces all line up. If that works, we can use this to hopefully paint all of these images up here, which should be these, onto this center component. So the way I have planned to do this is a little bit complicated, but involves a nested for loop. So for int y, so we're going to start with y, initialize y to 1, operate as long as y is less than 5, and increment y. And within that, we'll do the same thing with x. Within this, we will create the x and y coordinates within the panel to draw each tile. We'll make it a capital X, and the position will be 8 times x, because the margins both between a tile and the edge of the panel and between the tile and other tiles is 8 pixels, plus 64 times x minus 1, because 64 is the width of each tile. So for the first one, it will be located 8 pixels in plus 0, because there won't be any tiles before it. But for the second one, it will have 16 pixels plus 64 times 1, because it will have both 2 margins before it and a full 64 pixel tile before it. We'll do the exact same thing for y. Now that we've generated that, we will say image icon this tile will equal number tiles, which is our hash table, dot get For now, we'll put test x minus 1, y minus 1. Because of the way the array works, we need to do y minus 1 first, then x minus 1. So we'll get the integer at that particular part of this array, which later we'll replace with the array for the actual game that we wrote earlier, and hopefully draw the correct tile on it. So we've gotten the correct tile stored in the variable this tile, and then use this tile.paint icon this G capital X capital Y. Let's see if that works. First thing to do is to try and compile. So I'm going to first have to change to the right directory. There we go. And Java C D bin com / Adam P Jr. Java 2048 /star.java. Okay, I need to import something to get both the URL. I probably need to import something to get the... Looks like just the URL is the problem. I think that's java.net.url. So in this GUI class, let us import java.net.url. Save that and see how that affects our compiling. I'm using unchecked or unsafe operations when I try and get something out of the hash table, so I'm going to have to come back. To try and make this operation safer, I'm going to try something, and hopefully it will let me just do this. I'm going to say if number tiles contains key. Well, actually, before this, I'll just say int this number equals test y minus 1, y minus x minus 1. And then if number tiles contains the key this number, which should mean if the number is in one of these key value pairs that we added to number tiles. Then we can indent all this stuff under the if block and put this number as the key to get, and then hopefully it will paint the right image icon. We'll save this. We have incompatible types. Okay, so it returned, and I'll have to typecast it back into an image icon when I pull it out of the hash table. I think I can solve that by just doing image icon. Okay. That's not the way you do it. Okay, I'm just doing the wrong thing here. I just need to... I think if I put this in parentheses, this is the way it will cast it properly. We'll try this one. Okay, it looked like it's letting me do it and just giving me these warnings. I don't know why it's that unsafe, because I checked to see if the number tiles contain the key and then tried to get it. Worst case scenario, if it doesn't contain the key, it will just leave that space blank, and I'll see that when I run it. Now, this will be the hard part. I want to start using a jar file. So first what I'm going to do is touch manifest.txt, and then I'm going to open it and get it. And I'm going to say the main class is going to be com.adamp.java2048.java2048 capitalized. And I gotta see if I remember how to put together a jar file. Jar is for Java Archive. Manifest.txt. The name of the jar will be java2048.jar, and it's going to include the com packages and the images directory. Illegal option A. What is it talking about? Okay, I actually forgot to put in the arguments at the very beginning here. I need to put cvmf. Oops. That might work. And now I have this jar file here in this directory, in the bin directory. And now let me, hopefully this works. Java tac jar java2048.jar. And there's a whole bunch of errors. I'm getting a null pointer exception somewhere. So I'm going to have to look at that and come back. Okay, I realize something that happened. In the GUI class, I'm referring to the hash table this number. And I created load number tiles, which initializes and fills it up. But I never actually called that. So before I even do this game board, where it will start trying to draw it, I need to load number tiles. That might solve that problem. So let me close this. And go back to wherever I last compiled. I compiled. And now let me re-jarify it. And now let me run it. Okay, here we go. Now it's working. This is perfect. All our tiles are laid out here on our interface. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, and 1024. And in all the spots where the array was empty, it has this almost white looking empty space tile. So now that we know how to put the tiles on the board properly, all we need to do is put an instance of the game class, which we created at the beginning, where we made that array that moves up, down, left, and right, and use that array to draw this here. We'll finish that this episode, and then next episode we will watch for input from the user with the arrow keys up, down, left, and right, and edit the board accordingly. But right now, let's go ahead and add the instance of game class to our GUI class. We'll add that right up here at the top. Okay, so up here, since the game class is in the same package as GUI, we can have game game equals new game, and that will trigger the constructor for this. Now the other thing we need to do is make this game board accessible to the GUI class, because it's a private integer array. We won't be able to access it by default. So I need to make a new method called public int get game board. And this will just return the game board so that our GUI class can read it and put the number tiles on the board accordingly. And one thing we need to do in the constructor for the game class is, let's see, where do we put that? We need to add 2 new numbers right at the very beginning. So that will take place. Well, we'll have to have game right here, and then at the very beginning of our constructor, initialize it to new game. Now we should be good. At the beginning of the constructor of the GUI, it will call the constructor for game and create the new game board and add 2 numbers to it. And then here, when we paint the component for our central panel, we need to call this array, we'll call it board equals game.get game board. Is that what I called the get function? Yes, get game board. And then where it says test, I just got to change it to board. I think that should be good. So now we're creating a board and linking it to the paint component method. So let's change to source, compile it, change to bin, and jarify it. And run the jar. Okay, what happened there? We didn't save any of our files. That's what happened there. So let's try that again, doing it right this time. Compile. Jarify. And run. There we go. We have 2 1s randomly assigned on the game board. And if I run this again, it should be different. There we go. And hopefully if I run this a number of times, we'll eventually see it too. Perfect. So this is working correctly, and we already know that push up, down, left, and right are working correctly. So that's all for this episode. In the next one, we will make this listen for user input and adjust the board accordingly.